I'm really excited. This is the session that I've been the most excited about this entire time. We have two really, really brilliant people, women, who are going to contribute. I just know, like, not just gems, but just impart like some serious wisdom, but also from a clinical perspective on this space. I know people always like, I have girl chat with my friends, blah, 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 which is great. But I'm like, sometimes you just need that person who's like, I've done the reading, I've done the research. And so I'm really excited for that. So I'm going to read the bios to introduce them, and then we're going to get right into it. There will be time for Q&A. We're definitely going to leave some time for that. So as you're taking your notes, or if you have a journal, write your questions down, and then I'll let you know when we're doing the last question before, and then you guys can start submitting them so we can get right into the questions and answers. Okay, so first off, we have Dr. Candice Nicole. Dr. Candice Nicole Hargis is a counseling psychologist specializing in sex. She has a few roles as a science practitioner. She's an assistant professor in the University of Kentucky's counseling psychology program, where she directs, is it Rise 2 or Rise Squared? Because
Rise Squared.
Rise Squared, okay. Rise Squared research team. They study relationships, intimacy, and sexual enrichment, as well as race, intersectionality, and social justice engagement. She also works with individuals, couples, and groups who have relationship, intimacy, or sexual concerns. And she offers retreats, training, and workshops for people and organizations in those same areas. In addition to her primary focus on sex, her other two passions in research and life are social justice and leadership development. Those areas of interest guide all that she does, and she offers training, workshops, and individual consultations on both. And then Rachelle McCloud is an emotional wellness coach, and she specializes in helping women eliminate symptoms of anxiety, depression, and traumatic stress in 2 to 6 months instead of 2 to 6 years. And so I'm super excited to welcome them both to the Black Woman Heal virtual stage today. And I'm just ready to get started. So how are you guys doing today?
I feel happy but fatigued, so that's where I'm at.
Yes,
I feel that.
And nervous. And I'm excited to learn a lot from Dr. Candice. What a wonderful, yummy bio.
Oh, thank you. She pulled that off my website because
I was like,
I never asked anybody to read all that.
And I mean, I like to give people a good introduction. I was like, but I definitely didn't write that. Like, I'm gonna cite my sources. That was not my own thing. Awesome. So, similar to Tiffany's discussion, we're going to be talking about mental health, wellness, stress, all that kind of stuff. And so there's a lot to discuss, but I'm going to keep the questions open. So feel free to pivot as you feel necessary. And I'm really going to lean on you guys' expertise. So let's open this up with understanding what the toll of grief and trauma can be on the brain and the body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm happy to jump in with the toll. Well, it's a psychological and a physiological toll. So to your point, it's your mind, it's your interpersonal relationships, it's your body, it's your spirit sometimes. Like the things that we're grieving right now sit in our shoulders, they sit in our jawline, they affect how much patience you have for the people you care about, let alone the people you care less about. So, you might find yourself feeling angry or terrified or sad. And then in there's still pockets of joy that you can hold on to. So it's a pervasive effect. And because racial trauma is chronic, meaning that it's not just a one-time thing, you find yourself coming back to these feelings again and again.
Yeah. And, how I view this is that everything that we're experiencing has an emotional component, a mental component, a physical component, an energetic component, and a spiritual component.
Yeah.
And so everything that is happening and that has ever happened and that is currently happening and will happen, because we can really even tune into the future of these thoughts as well. Our system is just going off on all these levels. And many of us have strategies for one or two, but we don't necessarily know how to get to the other ones. Mm-hmm. And so anything that that doesn't get resolved, our limbic system, which is our survival system, can really be over alert, and it can really be really active. And I like to call this like, it's just really hot. Like, it's just like hypervigilant and wanting to pay attention to everything. And that's exhausting. I mean, when you're in that state, you are burning through your vitamins, your minerals, you know, you're having a hard time. This is not the healing stance. This is a survival stance. So all of your healing processes are rerouted and redirected to survival. And this is happening all the time. I mean, and so especially when we have heightened stress, but if you've got a history of anxiety, depression, or traumatic stress, that's happening. And that is a lot, because this part of the brain hijacks your thinking center and actually will literally shut it down. And so we can't think as well. We're just, you know, Dr. Candice,
have a hard time concentrating.
Right. Difficulty concentrating, irritability, because, you know, this part of the brain wants all the energy, and it's trying to suck all of the energy, and it's trying to shut everybody else down. And then people are asking you questions, and your survival center is like, stop talking to me, you know? And so, but we want to be in this part of the brain. This is where the magic happens. This is where our values are, and our morals, and our amazing ability to problem solve and find the exact right solutions for ourselves. And so, but what happens is the emotion can really get blocked from coming from this part of the brain into the thinking center. And so that's where we get a lot of this distress. That's when we'll stay more in the survival states, and then we'll notice ourselves looping and having the same thoughts over and over again, seeing the same flashes, the same. If like, for instance, if anybody watched the videos that have been going on, you'll have a mental replay of this. That is, your brain is trying to get things through, and this part of the brain is so neurotic and so committed to your wellness that it will not stop. And it will play that scene over and over and over and over again till it can get it through the healing pathways. And so a lot of times what we're finding is that there's so much distress, but it's because your brain's trying to heal. It's trying to get this movement going on so that it can upgrade and it can find those exact right solutions. And this is where a lot of our power is getting left and stuck. And we're not being able to get that power, get that emotion in there, so we can have both of our intellectual and our emotional power coming together and really creating. And so that's a toll. It just takes a huge toll, and we want to get back into this part of the brain. So
I wanted to just jump in because you said something that was so powerful. You're worn out, and you may not have done any physical activity.
Yes.
You feel exhausted because your brain is trying to reconcile the trauma, trying to reconcile the grief, trying to process that, trying to figure out how to concentrate through it. And so it wears you out. I mean, your body has that consistent stress response where you've not even moved. You might have laid in bed all day trying to recover and still feel exhausted. That's why a lot of people are having restlessness or really uneasy sleep right now, waking up really vibrant dreams, scary dreams. Thank you so much for saying that. That just brought that home for me.
Yeah. I kind of, that's bringing something up for me that I just think is interesting. A lot of this stuff is just watching yourself and really helping yourself where you're at and move the emotion. It's kind of like being in a lot of times we can go 2 feet in a trauma where we're just being tossed around by it, and we're really ungrounded and we're moving around. And then, you know, that's really frustrating. So our body will shift us into being 2 feet out, and now we're numb, and now we're dissociated, and now we're there. And this is not the healing the healing stance, but it's not the re-traumatizing stance either, except for, you know, you can't stay there because then you'll have, you know, all the things you missed out on, and that's a whole nother kind of trauma. But really what we want to do is we want to be able to be 1 foot in the emotion, the event, the feeling, and 1 foot out observing, right? So this is where we're feeling into life, and this is where we're observing into life, and this is really a powerful healing stance. And so when you're observing yourself, there's just kind of some really cool things to notice about yourself. And Dr. Candice talked about waking up at night, you know, when you wake up at night, depending on the time you wake up, it's really, you can be processing different emotions. Like from 1 to 3 is typically anger.
Yep.
3 to 5 can be more grief, right? So if you're waking up 4 o'clock, it's time for grief movement. Move the grief, support yourself there. And 5 to 7 is more the letting go process of grief, right? And so these are some tricks that you can learn to take really good care of yourself and really consciously manage your system, you know, on as many levels as possible.
That's so rich. Like there was just so much information there, and thank you for that education. I think sometimes too, it's like people feeling like I don't know what my brain is doing, and so like trying to reconcile how they move. I know I have that where I'm like I'm trying to get things done, so my brain needs to line up with what I'm trying to do, but like not giving my brain space, you know, to like exist however it exists in like the natural scientific order of things. So that's really helpful. And kind of you guys started naming examples of how these things show up. Which brings me to kind of the question of like trauma can look different for different folks. And so what are some of the emotional processing traits or habits or behaviors that are often misunderstood, especially for Black women?
Yeah, I would start with anger and irritability, which is often a sign of depressive symptomology or anxiety or a trauma response. And so people might be like, you know, she got an attitude. What's wrong with her? She's always upset. But in fact, she might be processing or working through some of that trauma, some of that grief, some of that pain. And it doesn't resonate with most people as pain because people rarely empathize with Black women. And so when they see that, rather than trying to sit in with her, to be with her in that anger, in that grief, in that trauma, they're distancing at best distancing, and at worst fighting her, like terrorizing her to get her not to feel, to suppress her feeling, or to constrict it so that other people can feel comfortable around her. So if you've ever been called the angry Black woman at work, or aggressive at work, or intimidating at work, that is them trying to organize your emotional space so that they can preserve their comfort because they don't want to empathize with you. I think that's one of the most commonly misunderstood when it comes to Black women.
Yes.
And
right.
Just to piggyback on that, and I think that we underestimate how much work other people haven't done. You know, I think a lot of what's going on is that people they're not doing their own emotional work. Hold space for anybody else. You know, and it's like, this is like, we're not very trauma informed. And so everybody's just in a survival state over everything. And so it's just like the people. So, and this is really what's so empowering is that once you can take care of your own emotional wellness, you break free of other people holding you in boxes, because you just rise up out of that level and they just can't hold you, you know, but as long as they can poke a wound and knock you out, you're done.
And there's another piece to that. There's the systemic power piece. So if we were just all operating in an equitable or equal system, it would be easier to work on your stuff and that be enough. But then when somebody can label you and assign power and value to your label at your profession, in school, and all of these spaces, that is how it becomes problematic. So sure, human beings need to do their own work. And at the same time, we've got to use our healthy whole selves to dismantle these systems. Because if there's a white professor and that person says, well, you know what, you're so angry, you're not professional, and I'm a gatekeeper here, that's the end of your career. Whereas if you were just two people who didn't have discrepancies in power, that person could say that about you. And then you could say, you know, that's a wounded person over there, and they don't get to define my space. I think you still should take that stance, but in that stance, there's also got to be some dismantling of those systems of power.
Absolutely.
That's huge. And like you guys both brought up like really great points. I had a conversation with a friend not too long ago, and we were like, isn't it so exhausting being the only person doing the work? Is kind of what you were saying, Rachel, because you're like, I'm to see the other side of you, and you know, and then they're just like, I'm gonna be here and be comfortable, and you're gonna deal with it, you know, because. And so what would your advice be to people who are in those kinds of situations where it might be a boss, it might be a family member, it might be a friend or an old friend or whatever, where they're trying to do the work and have this kind of like graceful nature and do all of it, but you can only play so many roles, because quite frankly, you can't make decisions for other people about how they choose to live their life or handle their emotions. So what would your advice be to people who are in those situations?
I think, you know, I think that when you're talking about this, you're talking about an entirely different skill set. And it's not, and just because you're using your own emotions doesn't mean you turn into a nice little quiet, docile little thing. What happens when you move your emotion in there, your thinking center creates the exact, it creates really beautiful solutions. And some of those solutions might be knock, knock, here I am. We're having this conversation today. You know, it might be something that's more assertive than you have ever been before. It might be something, it might be, maybe you decide to let it go. Maybe you do. I don't necessarily judge what people do when they get the emotion into the thinking center. That's their business. And I trust that that's really powerful and it's right for them in their situation. Mm-hmm. My thing is let's move it from here to here. So if this was, let's just say somebody was my gatekeeper and they were blocking me out for any reason, but especially because I'm threatening to them. I have cuss words for this, but that would piss me the hell off. Okay. So my job then, instead of opening my can of whoop ass, which is really what I got ready to go right here. And I got an inner person that's like, here, go ahead, take it, put this on the situation. I'm going to be like, okay, we're angry. We're pissed. And I believe that our emotions are for us. Yes. Our emotions aren't for other people. And so my team, my emotions are telling me, oh, hell no. And now I need to go talk with them and I need to help process this and move this emotion from here to here. And there's lots of strategies for that, you know? And so as this comes back down then and goes into the right place, all of a sudden you start noticing your thoughts taking on different shapes and they're being more constructive and they're not looping. So you can't get from A to B. And so really moving your own emotion, there's no threat of becoming a doormat. As a matter of fact, you anti-doormat yourself, but you're not coming around kiboshing people with your anger.
Yeah.
You know? And I think even, I had something else coming back, but I think it's going to have to make its round again, but it had to do with how our symptoms, but okay. So that's my response for now. What do you think, Candice?
Yeah, I would agree with much of that. I think the body is your first source of information. And so if I walk into a room and I'm not breathing deeply, if I'm holding my breath, that's information for me. I think your somatic symptoms are information, your emotions are information, and then they inform what you choose to do with it and what you choose to say. So I trust and validate all of the emotions and somatic stuff that comes up. That's the first step, not to pretend like I don't notice it. If I get a headache every time I go to a place, that's information. So, okay, I'm having a headache. What might this mean? Getting curious about myself, getting curious about my emotion and the relationship I'm having with people in that space that may be giving me information. Somebody asked what a gatekeeper is. That's a person that has the power to make an evaluative decision about whether you progress in a field or not. And so if I have to have a conversation with a gatekeeper who I feel doesn't respect or trust or believe or value my humanity, and I can't breathe well, I might need to take a breath first. I might need to honor the fact that my body needs oxygen to make an informed decision. So, and that's going to help me clarify what I want to say and what I want to do in the next moment. I'm the type of person that believes in confronting with care. And so anytime something happens, even if it's a person that has that type of systemic power over me, I trust the fact that we're all human at the same value. And so I can speak to them as if they and I have the same value, even if in this specific system, they might have a different level of power. So that happened to me once when, one of the provosts at the university named everyone else. We were at an award ceremony and named everyone else Dr. So-and-so and Dr. So-and-so and Dr. So-and-so. And I was Miss when I'm Dr. So-and-so. And so when I got up to do my speech and my presentation, I said, my name is Dr. Candice Hargans. And that's important to say in this space because oftentimes Black women, and just explained, what had happened there. And, whether or not that to other people, they would have felt like that was the right thing to do is not up for judgment or debate. It's just what I chose to do in the moment. But for me, that felt powerful. It felt useful and it helped resolve the pain that I felt in that moment when that person intentionally or unintentionally, who knows, sought to discredit me.
Yeah. And I think that's a really good example of you felt and you heard your emotions going on. And then you acknowledged them and you took some deep breaths and you were able to stay in your thinking center as opposed to having that shut down and go into fight mode.
Yes.
Freeze mode or faint or flee.
I'm a freezer. So I know I have to breathe. I'll end up passed out somewhere.
But I have found that we can all do all these strategies. My primary, I will fight. And so I have to like hold the team back, you know. But I also find that I will freeze quite a bit. And I'm actually just kind of discovering that. And I think that's what we do. We come into deeper layers of ourselves, and we see that it's, you know, and when you go into a mode, you don't get a choice. This part of the brain has its own coding and its own process, and it's unreasonable. You can't reason with. You can't say, okay, this time can we fight? You know, this time could we just not? Like, some people will hit trauma and they'll go straight to sleep. It's really kind of an interesting thing to watch, because they'll be talking about something, they'll have a flashback and they're out. You know, and you're like, what happened? Like, what? I thought we were having a conversation. But when you get in that part, it's automatic, and it just happens. So you don't get to choose, because that part of the brain's job is to keep you alive. And if it thinks there's a threat, done. No reasoning, no talking, no nothing. And that's why our talk therapies don't create very quick change, because it's working with this part of the brain. This is not the part that's we're having trouble. We're having trouble with our survival system and the coming up.
And this is the newest part. That's what, the way I was trained as a psychologist, I had to decolonize a lot of that, because we're thinking, oh, this is going to be all cognitive therapy. And I'm like, I don't think so.
I have goosebumps, because what you're talking about is we've had all these beautiful, rich ways of moving our emotion for so long.
Generations.
Being sitting around telling stories and dancing. Yeah. I mean, those things that we had together were just so powerful. And then it's like, you come here and it's like, okay, no, you got to just, stale, and we're going to use our thinking center and talk our way through. But we knew that there was all this movement involved, and handshakes and hugs and touches and holding hands. And, there was all this stuff that would be there.
Yes.
And so, but it's really out. So it's our job just to really put it back in. And it's okay that if we're not comfortable dancing anymore, it's okay that if we're not comfortable singing it anymore, there's so many ways to do it. It's just, we got to do it.
Yes. I love that you even brought up singing, because a lot of people don't realize how, one, liberating, but two, transformative to your nervous system singing can be. And so just the breath work that goes into singing, but also the way your heart rate variability changes when you sing, and your vagal system, the way that shapes your body and your health and your wellness. Like, I remember being in chorus when I was a kid, and being in dance when I was a kid, and all of those activities that I just naturally knew to do to heal. Drawing, journaling, writing poetry, all of those things you have to reclaim. So whatever you were doing as a kid, maybe you went and read a book, or maybe you went and played the piano, or maybe you sang, or maybe you screamed, maybe you danced, maybe you ran. Those are things you want to bring back to yourself in this time of incredible stress for most people.
Yeah. And I'm going to be doing an exercise at the end of this to share some of my favorite interventions. But really, when you're working with the survival system, you are working with the same system we have like as babies. We don't have a cognitive function when we're babies. We have this mode. We're running on this mode. And with babies, you hold them and you rock them and you say, shh, it's going to be okay. And you say, oh, I know, it's so tough. And you hold them and you're rocking them, because you are actually their regulating nervous system. You're regulating their nervous system. There we go. And that's your job. And so, and we rub their little feet, and we play all the little counting, we're hooking up their brain.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of that. When people are in this state, that's the best strategy. You don't want to use logic when you're over here in your survival center, because this part of the brain has already shut that down, doesn't want to talk about it. And that's a great way to get your head snatched off or bit off. But really at this point, and it's not our job to regulate anybody else. I mean, except for our children. We can do it as a kindness, but it's not always kind to step in and regulate somebody, because people need to build their own strength. And we can really become addicted to things that regulate us.
Yeah.
That's really what addiction comes from. And we can be just as addicted to people as we can to substances.
Absolutely.
So, but when we get there, I don't know where I was going, Candice, with that.
I'm going to build on that, because you said something that hit for me. So I always talk about the 4 levels of care. And when you said regulating and substances, I thought about the first level, which is numbing. So we've got numbing, which is base level. And then you've got self-care, which is really popular in big language now. But then you've got collective care. And finally, you've got soul care. And those are the 4 levels of care when I talk with clients about it. Numbing is not something I throw away completely. And a lot of people do, but numbing is necessary. Sometimes you need to feel nothing to extract something really painful. But if you over rely on numbing, and that's binge anything, binge drinking, binge eating, binge social media, binge Netflix, binge sex, like all the compulsions, binge shopping, some of us that's their thing, you know, like all of those things are so you don't feel something, right? And sometimes you don't need to feel. So honor that, but don't overuse it. Self-care is what we've heard a lot more about. So, you know, it might be getting your nails done. It might be going to therapy. It might be doing exercise. It might be setting a sleep routine. It might be any of those things that are care for your individual self, whether it's like your physical body, your capacity to experience the world. And then collective care is what we are doing now. Getting together, coming alongside each other, sharing in an experience. So your social support, your girls, your people, connecting with them, talking, doing these Zoom family reunions. We did one a few weeks ago. That was hilarious. Seeing elders on Zoom is just a joy in of itself. You know, even the collective care, like a versus battle and everybody being in community with one another and jamming to their favorite songs, like, but also resistance movement. Being at a protest for some people might be collective care, where it's like, I'm going to do something about this and be among people who are working actively to dismantle oppression. So knowing that we cannot heal in isolation is really important. And then soul care is, depending on how you understand whatever your higher power is, if that's something that you subscribe to, could be meditating or prayer or going hiking and being in nature. It could be anything that taps into that plane that's above what we can see.
Yes.
So those are those levels that I like to work with people on.
Absolutely. And I think that I love that soul care. And I love that. I mean, our brains love to go there. Our brains are totally unlimited, you know, and we create from the unseen substances in the world. You know, we have ideas and they're coming through. And that can be one of the challenges with anxiety, depression, and traumatic stress, or just trauma that's coming up that's working through, is your brain can be so obsessed with what it's working on that you can't access your creativity.
Yes.
And that can be really, really frustrating. And that's why I'm like, let's move it. Let's move it. And to piggyback on what Dr. Candice said, that it's really important to use a mind-body intervention, because it's the mind interventions are great, but this is in your body. Your body remembers. Your body has to be cared for too. It's going through this stuff just like you are. And I like when we are working, when I'm helping them eliminate symptoms, I'm looking for the body symptom, and that is my checkpoint. Is it still there? Okay, there's more work to do. Is it still there? Okay, and when it clears or it moves, okay, now we're getting it. We're getting there. And so all the interventions, that the singing, the dancing, you know, the hugging, that we're using the body to do the work, and we're engaging the mind with the body. And I just want to say a couple of things about what's going on in this chat. Kiana, you cracked me up over here that I'm a fighter and I can't even fight. I got you, sister.
That's probably why I was not a fighter. My body was like, just go on and die then. Never mind. Just
I inherited a sister-in-law who is actually a fighter and can fight. And I'm just like, please, never let us get to Olympic state, because I'm gonna get my butt whooped. Anyway, I love her. And then somebody else had a question about, let's see. She wanted to talk about finding, speaking of shutting down trauma, that's one of the things that really stop us from healing. But we do it because if we go into the trauma, it's so overwhelming, it will shut our system down, and then we won't be able to function. And we need to function because life slows down for no one. And so it's an unconscious way to stay afloat, but we're not healing. And that's not shutting it out and keeping it in the back is not healing. But it's a brain hack, because we learned that if we can just stay busy, we can stop your inner healer from going over here to dig around and stuff. And if it's blocked, we know it's blocked. We know that if I think about that, it's going to be bad. And so it's to keep this part of the brain busy. It stops it from doing the healing work it could be doing, which means going and redoing the trauma. And so when when we want to heal past traumas that are too big, there's really strategies for that. And it can happen really quickly. And it needs to be in a way that's not too painful. And so for some people, that means no pain at all. And that's great, because we can create that. We can really start diving into some really, really painful traumas in ways that don't hurt anymore. And because we're doing mind-body intervention now, that means we don't have to talk about our traumas to heal. And that is empowering. And that gives us the freedom to really reclaim our emotional wellness from birth forward, if that's really what we want to do or what we need to do. I'm all about creating function. And so a lot of times that's really what guides if there's something blocking your function, like your ability to have sex, I'm pulling from Dr. Candice, then my goal is to get in there and remove whatever is the emotional mental block there, or the physical block. Or energetic block, right? Or if you can't public speak, or you know that you're supposed to be an entrepreneur starting this business and getting out from the grips of the gatekeepers and becoming your own, but you can't do it, then there's function in there where you're blocked. And we have so much power within us. It's like when we're going into our inner worlds, we get to activate unlimited amounts of power that are like shoved up in this little operating system. But just like we have the power to walk, we have the water, and we build that and we activate that power. We can activate any power that we want with intention and using our brains properly, and then practice. And so that's really what navigates a lot of my stuff. And so, but there are lots of tricks to go find suppressed traumas. And I really love to use the body, like Dr. Candice was talking about. It really holds so many keys, and really you can use the body to go straight there. It's a somatic bridge, and I would not do that without support, because it can be dangerous. You have it suppressed for a reason. And I never want to go against the body's wisdom, because it's set up for your highest function. If we pull something out that it's not ready to pull out from, the whole thing could fall down. And that's what you intuitively know, and why you're suppressing the trauma, or the big emotions, or the fear, or whatever's holding your anxiety, depression, and traumatic stress in place. And so I really want to also just talk about that, respecting that process and working with it.
Awesome. And I know I popped out there, but like I said, y'all just keep going. I'm going to move over to question and answers. So there is a question that's popped up in here twice about books you recommend as you try to look deeper into your somatic responses written for us, by us. If you guys have any recommendations for that.
I'm reading My Grandmother's Hands right now, and I'm not all the way through it, but already it's a gem, and that's written by a Black man. The Racial Healing Handbook is one that I really like. That's by Annalise Singh. She's a Sikh woman. There was one more that just left my mind, but it might come back.
And if you find it later, that's fine. We're going to send out the resources afterwards. Okay. So even if you email me and you're like, oh, these are the books I had a chance to kind of look at my library. Yeah. Just kind of giving people resources afterwards to follow up on. Awesome. And there was a question earlier on.
Rachel, then she might have had some.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And I don't have any on that. Okay. I really have been, my focus, I got a little bit of how the brain heals trauma from some interneuropersonal biologists, and just really paired it with my work and saw what worked and why it worked, and then eliminated everything that didn't work and just do that. And so that's really my happy spot and where I'm playing. I'm committed to I told myself 2021, we're diving back into brain work and those sorts of things. So if it was 2021 or 2022, I may have some really great answers.
So there was a question earlier about, I remember it's kind of up there in the scroll, but someone was saying, like, based on all the symptoms and stuff you guys were talking about earlier, how would you talk to someone who is kind of showcasing those things in terms of helping them, like trying to help them get help? If they necessarily might not think that they need it, or they might not recognize how a lot of those signs point to the anxiety, trauma, depression, stress that we were talking about.
I lead with empathy. So acknowledging and bearing witness to what you see in them. Girl, looks like you're in pain. Man, that looks like this has been a tough month, a tough week, a tough day. this just naming what you see, they don't have to say yes or no to that. It's not an evaluation where you have to be in agreement or disagreement. It's just bearing witness to. And first, if you've done your own work and you've done therapies or things like that, you can say, this is who I went through to work through something like that in case you're interested one day. Make it an autonomous decision. Don't force anyone. People have to come to it, if possible, at the pace that works for them. But naming and bearing witness to their experience is the first step. You don't even want to come in without that, because otherwise it just feels judgmental.
That's right. Mm-hmm. That's right. And what Dr. Candice is talking about is that when we hear our experience shared back to us, our a lot of times people say, yeah, you're right.
Mm-hmm. The deep breath. Yes.
The prefrontal cortex starting to secrete calming chemicals onto the limbic system. And it's a really powerful way to kind of do some brain work with other people. Is just, I look at empathy statements as like a shield and a sword. Like you can pretty much get out of everything. I don't like talking with people when they're in their survival state outside of therapy. Like if I'm not holding the space for you, you need to do your own work. Mm-hmm. Right. And so when people are there, I'm like, I'm going to put an empathy statement out there and I'm out, because, or if I want to be supportive, I can do some of the things like, a hand on the back, if that's okay with them. It's not always okay with people, but body stuff. And I think Dr. Candice is really right with it's really, people, it doesn't matter what we teach. It matters what people learn. Mm-hmm. And that's a function of neural pathway connection. And that you can't get in there and neural pathway connection anybody. I mean,
right.
We're trying to do that and we just can't, And so being able to support that process. And if you can do it in yourself, then it's like all of a sudden you can start coming out to really, because all our brains are the same, And so once you can do your own work, it really starts to spread out around you. That's what I think.
I believe in doing it in your family. In my marriage, empathy is key. Just, hey, honey, it looks like you've had a rough day. I live in a very white space with a beautiful Black husband. And so his experience in this space, feels taxing or toxic sometimes. And so when he comes home and it's just like validation or empathy, that's when the weight of the world falls off his shoulders and we have a good night. Otherwise, if I'm questioning or evaluating, did that really happen? And we do this to each other sometimes as humans because we don't have the energy to sit with other people's stuff. And that's when people get activated again. So, yeah.
Yeah, because, once you're saying why, well, why are you always so crabby? Now this is for your thinking center and they're not in their thinking center. They're over here, can't we just, and so that's when, so.
Awesome. And so the next question was about accessibility. So she says, how can the mental wellness space be more accessible to Black women? I know a lot of people can't afford to see a therapist or are without insurance to cover those costs. What would you guys' recommendations be?
I like therapy for Black girls as a resource. Specifically for Black women, they have a directory of therapists all over the United States who do therapy. And it's typically Black women who are in the directory, although there are some other people who aren't, but who work with Black women. Finding places that have a sliding scale or are nonprofit organizations. That's a bit trickier because oftentimes the people who are recruited to work there are not as well trained as people who run other types of practices, just because the budgets are so low and they can't afford to pay people a living wage all the time. But it's a good starting place. Like for me, the Center for Healing Racial Trauma, we have a sliding scale and we never turn any person of color away due to inability to pay, because the consulting and training work we do for white facing organizations subsidizes all of that. And so that's the way I designed the practice, because I knew that therapy wasn't accessible. Most people can't afford the $150 an hour that I might charge. Typically, they would need $25 an hour. They would need $0 sometimes because they're unemployed due to all kinds of things. So having that in place, I think, facilitates that. But, there are places like that all over.
Yeah. And I would say that in the field of anxiety, depression, traumatic stress, we are not very great as a country with how we're training people and where people are at with their training. And that's really why I really like to teach people the most popular interventions in the country, because I know that you will work for yourself harder than anybody else will. And if you just have the tools, they're yours, right? And so, but what I did when I was doing this, especially because I would not have seen a therapist, I felt entirely too fragile, and I just wouldn't. I love that now. I like to hop around and say, "Ooh, I wonder what we're going to do." You know, I like to play in my inner world now, which is so funny because I was not going to do it. But I found an intervention that somebody just handed to me. She said, "Try this, it'll change your life." And it was emotional freedom techniques. It's simple. It's working with the meridian system. So it's ancient Chinese medicine, which probably means that it's ancient people medicine. And so and this is what I'm going to give you guys a demonstration of at the end, but it's something you can do for yourself all the time, anytime you want, anytime you need. And if that's not the right one for you, find these ones, practice, you know, see if you can sit with yourself, because if you can take some of the stress off, you're going to function better. And that makes you think more clearly for your next step. Right. And so wherever you're at, that's really where you want to start. And you can really master these skills yourself and really become who you need to become for yourself.
Absolutely.
Awesome. And so we're running short on time. I think I can squeeze in 2 more questions. But before I do, I know that we talked about before kind of pre the session, if you guys had any activities and stuff that you would lead people with to be able to practice at home.
Yeah. So I have the Black Lives Matter meditation for healing racial trauma. And that's on my website at drcandicenichole.com. It's free. It always has been, always will be. You can download that, or you can just listen to it on SoundCloud or iTunes, whatever works well for you. And that's one that has been featured in a number of places. And I think it's because it resonates with people, you know, and it might not with you, but it's accessible in there. So I'll leave you guys with that. And I know, Rachel, you wanted to do one.
Yeah. And mine, I have a handout on my website. It's rachelmccloud.com /handout. And if you go there, you can download that. And emotional freedom techniques is the one I like to start with, because you can do a lot of very deep work without there's some negative side effects of digging in your inner world. And we want to be safety first, and then we want to do a lot of the work, but we have to have that safety piece in. And so emotional freedom techniques has no known side effects, and it works really, really fast. And I like results. And so this is when I try new interventions, if I get quick results with it, or I can get quick results with my clients, I keep it. If I don't, it's out. And so, or it's in the back, maybe I'll pull from it, you know, after they're, you know, whatever. But really, I want to really put the fire out. And so the thinking center can turn back on and work its magic. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to guide you guys through an exercise now, and I'm going to have you do this exercise with me. And this is a tapping intervention. We're going to use the body. I don't tap on my body because it just doesn't work for me anymore. So I'm going to tap in my field, but I want you to go ahead and tap on your body in these points. I'm going to walk you through those, but I'm just kind of giving you an example right now. And I want you to participate by taking full responsibility of your emotional wellness and mental wellness and physical wellness. And we're going to work with a rating system. So on a scale of 0 to 10, how intense this thing is. And we're going to look at some anxiety, just one anxiety, because we don't want to open up a whole lot. You don't want to open up more than you can handle in a moment. And so that's a nice way to keep safety in place. Excuse me. And so a scale of 1 to 10 of how distressing this is, 10 being maximum distress, 0 being no problem whatsoever. And so where you're at there, this has to do with you and how you function, and you can just grab a number. It doesn't have to be precise. This is just going to help me track what's happening. And I'm going to look at the polls, and I think, yep, it's coming on now. So before you click anything on the poll, I want you to go ahead and choose something that you're anxious about. Okay. And as you're tuning into that, I want you just to ask one question: what fear is coming up? Okay, and I want you to notice that fear. And now I want you to put it in your body, and I want you to see how is your body letting you know that you're anxious, that this fear is there. Where is this fear in your body? Okay. Some of you may have an easier time with this, with the body piece than others, and that's okay. I just want you to tune in and check, because you're doing the work. You're firing that neural pathway, and that means you're building that. And so that's good. Okay, so now you can find it in your body, or maybe it's outside your body. Sometimes that happens as well. It's like this, it feels like this feeling. I want you to notice what that sensation is. Is it squeezy? Is it tight? Is it heavy? Is it hot? Is it cold? Is it moving? Is it pulsing? Is it just staying there like a brick? And there's no wrong answer. Okay, and I want you also to notice, is there a color in your body about this? Is this sensation, what color is this? Okay, and now I want you to find out how intense this is for you on a scale of 0 to 10. And when you have that, I want you to go ahead and choose one of the numbers for you. And I don't know exactly how the technology of that works, but I'd like to be able to catch the...
I think you have to click on a number yourself as well. So
I don't know if the results will come up. We'll see. Okay, so this is our target. This is what we're going to work on. We're going to work on the fear. We're going to work on where it's at in your body. We're going to work on, well, let me ask another question for you. And we're going to work on the intensity. If this sensation had words, what would it be saying? And you might hear lots of things. And if it's too intense, I want you to back away from it. You might hear a statement. You might hear screaming. You might hear crying. You might get a vision of someone like this. You know, you might hear a sound. You might have a knowing. But I want you just to gather that information. Okay. And now we're going to do an intervention on it. Okay. So this is our target. And if we let your mind go to any other place, we're going to activate a lot more distress. We don't want to go there. This is what we're measuring. This is what we're focused on. Okay. And so with this in your focus, I want you to go ahead and tap on the side of your hand over here, the juicy part. Good. And just notice it. Notice what's going on in your body and this anxiety. And go ahead, tap under your nose. And under your lip and your middle finger and outside your eye. Okay, now we're gonna tap a little bit more. Okay, and I'm gonna have you tap on your eyebrow right here. This is a trauma point and an anxiety point. Okay, outside your eye, this is rage, anger. You might need to remember that one if you're like me. Under your eye, this is stomach. This is a big anxiety piece and about power. Under your nose. Under your lip. And just notice what's going on in your body. Notice all the information that you gathered, the fear that's coming up, collarbone. And it's okay if you're not exactly on the point. Intention matters a lot when you're doing this kind of work. Okay. And then there's a point right here. It's in the middle of your bra strap under your arm. Okay, good. And then there's another one under here, directly under your breast, on your rib. And sometimes if some of us are blessed with larger breasts, we can't get in there. You can just tap there and it'd be like that liver point, And then if you're going to shake someone's hand, you're going to tap here on your thumb and your first finger. And just notice this fear and how intense it is. Middle finger.
How are the taps supposed to be too? Are they supposed to be lighter or more substantial?
Light is perfect. See, I'm not even tapping and this is how I do mine. So these are not things you have to do deeply, and you don't even need to do a lot. You can get away with even 1 tap or 3 taps. Or sometimes if you're in a meeting and you're like, starting to stress out, you just rub the points and nobody has to even know. And I saw you, Abigail, I saw you take a deep breath, and that's some of the stuff we're looking for, because we want your system to start calming, right? Yawning, taking deep breaths, those sorts of things. Okay, so now I want you to tune back into the fear that our target fear. And I want you to go ahead and see how intense that is right now for you. And there's a new poll on there, and I want you to click that and just let me know where you're at with that.
Let me make sure it's public. Okay, cool.
Okay.
Let me see. Should be a new one. Okay. It doesn't have, it just says rate your anxiety right now. It doesn't have the 10 highest thing anymore. Just so people don't re-vote in the same poll.
Go ahead and put your number in the chat. Put your before and your after number in the chat. And we'll see where it's at. This intervention will work on a lot of anxiety. Sometimes it won't touch it. And so I want to see where you're at, because if most of us are coming down, I want to keep going. And if not, there's another intervention that we'll try. That's like my sledgehammer, and we'll kibosh it. Okay. Good. Okay, so CARE's coming down to a 3. Wonderful. Okay, Vivian's got some movement. Good, good, good. Good, good, wonderful. 6 to a 4. Yes, that's what we want. Okay, Kiana is still the same. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Okay, I'm going to teach you this next intervention, because at least if anybody's in Kiana's boat, we can give this a whirl. And that's really what we do. If one thing doesn't work, we'll move to the next. You know, if you still got energy coming up, choose your next thing. Okay, wonderful. So most people's are coming down. Okay, I want you to tune back in to this fear. And then I want you to notice what's going on in your body. It might have moved. Sometimes it will move from your stomach to your shoulder, or your shoulder to your elbow, whatever. And I want you to see what that sensation is. If that sensation is something that's tight now, if it's the same as it was, just less or the same. And I want you to ask yourself, if this sensation had words, what would it be saying? And just note that might be the same, or it might be something new. And just grab that data up. Okay. And now this one's a little bit more complicated. So I don't use it. Well, actually, I use it a ton right now. But you're going to hold your collarbone point, and you're going to tap on this. This meridian point is responsible for fight, flight, freeze, and faint. And this intervention is called collarbone breathing, and this is in the handout. When you're breathing, you're expanding, and you're holding your breath, which I'm going to have you do. You're expanding the plates in your head, and you're just making room for energy to flow. And so this one I love to use because it really helps reset neural pathways and really create a lot of change. So you're going to touch here on your collarbone point. We're going to use both collarbone points. And I'm going to have you tap continuously right here on the back of your hand, in pinky finger and ring finger divot in there. And it's okay if you wander around, because sometimes that happens when you're trying to do this. But this is where we're going to be. Okay, and I want you to take a deep breath in and hold it. Halfway out and hold it. All the way out and hold it. Breathe halfway in and hold it. And breathe regular. Okay, good. And tune back into your fear that we're working on, and curl to your knuckles. And take a deep breath in and hold it. Halfway out and hold it. All the way out and hold it. Breathe halfway in and hold it. And breathe regular. Good. And I want you to come over to your other side. Same hand. Yep. And same tapper. And take a deep breath in and hold it. And halfway out and hold it. All the way out and hold it. Breathe halfway in and hold it. And breathe regular. And you don't have to be paying super attention to the fear. We just know that's what we're working on. And now come up to your fingers, be tapping on that. Good. Take a deep breath in and hold it. Halfway out and hold it. All the way out and hold it. Breathe halfway in and hold it. And breathe regular. Good. Okay, now we're going to transition and do the same thing back, but we're going to take our tapper, and it's going to become our toucher. It's going to be the tapper. Okay, and same thing back. And just, I want you to tune into this fear and tune into what's going on in your body, and just take a deep breath in and hold it. Halfway out and hold it. All the way out and hold it. Breathe halfway in and hold it. And breathe regular. Good. And curl to your knuckles. Take a deep breath in and hold it. Halfway out and hold it. All the way out and hold it. Breathe halfway in and hold it. And breathe regular. Okay, over to your other side. Yep. And take a deep breath in and hold it. Halfway out and hold it. All the way out and hold it. Breathe halfway in and breathe regular. And if you got lost, that's okay. Just keep doing your best here. Let's do one more. This is the last one. Take a deep breath in and hold it. Halfway out and hold it. All the way out and hold it. Breathe halfway in and hold it. And breathe regular. Okay. All right. I want you to tune into your fear. Look at the target. I don't want you to let your mind wander around it. Just look at the one target and take an inventory of what's going on in your body. And how intense is this for you now? And I want you to go ahead and write your before and this last one. And let's see where you're at now. Awesome. Hey. Yay, good, good, good. So half. Okay, 4 to a 3. Good. Okay, and so you know, this just works on everything. This was the only intervention I had. I really thought that this intervention was magical, and like this was the best intervention that was ever created, ever. But it's not true, because it's just, our brains are just this magical, and when we support it right, it just happens. But this one I find is really fast. It's really quick, and you really can try it on anything and get some really powerful movement. Okay, and so for LT, it went up, and sometimes that happens, and so and it traveled to a new area, and so you're going into the event. You're going into the fear, and that's a good thing if you can tolerate it. If it feels too overwhelming and too not, you can create the picture of a container or a really powerful box and throw it in there, put the lid on. Sometimes, you know, it's mental work, right? We're unlimited mentally. And so sometimes you're like, that's not enough. I need a padlock. I need to call an ancestor to come sit on the box, put a foot on the box, like do whatever mentally you need to do to keep the box closed. And you can really use the tapping then to imagine healing energy going into the box. But if it's at a 10 and you're okay with that, keep tapping. You know, any movement is good movement, as long as you feel safe and you're confident with that. And sometimes these things, you know, they don't move down a lot. And that's a lot of times because we need to break them down a little bit further and take them piece by piece and get the whole thing resolved. So, but I wanted you to have an experience of your body communicating to you. I wanted you to have, okay, let's see, went from my throat to hands, and it was pretty intense. Yes, that's, your body has a lot to say about this, and this energy is in there. And so if you can like I said, if you can handle the intensity, great. If not, you can like imagine the energy pouring off into that box, or, you know, get up, shake it off. That's a really great thing to be doing, because it's movement. But now we're talking about, this is what animals do. They just, like, you'll see them get chased by the wind, and they escaped by the hair of their, you know, whatever, and now they'll shake it off, and that's their healing mechanism. We've got crying, we've got all of these things are really powerful. So just take care of yourself, and you can even, to exit route, you can be like, okay, now I'm coming back and I'm calm and I'm not going back in there anymore, and that was too intense for me, but it was good to know that that was there, and I am done with that for now. And you can get professional help, or you can wait a little while and keep tapping on other things and come back to that, and it'll be better, because everything is connected. And once you get the healing pathways opened up, the things that couldn't get through there, now it will have the strength and the knowledge and the capacity to move those bigger things. So
that's awesome. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
I hope, you know, everybody can take that with them. I know there's a ton of other questions. So how can people get in touch with you? Or just even follow you, or if you guys write or blog or whatever. I don't know if you just want to list out your resources. I'm going to send them out, but just so people have them.
Yeah, you can find me at Dr. Candice Nicole on Instagram or Facebook, and at the Center for Healing Racial Trauma.com or drcandicenicole.com.
Awesome.
I am on Facebook. You can find me Rachel McCloud, LCSW. I'm there. I have lots of videos talking about, I nerd out about anxiety and healing. And I'm also have my website. That's rachelmccloud.com I'm doing what I do. Anyway, RachelMcCloud.com. And my program is very specific. It's for people that really want, I have an intensive program. And it's for people who really want to learn these strategies and want my support guiding them through that. And so, yeah, reach out if this is something that you want to explore. And I have a webinar really showing you what I do. And so that's how you can find me.
Awesome. Awesome. And I want to thank you guys so much. I'm sorry my video cut out, but thank you guys for, just imparting so much wisdom and knowledge and helping us understand ourselves better. I definitely, I know it was needed, but even me personally, I'm definitely going to be using that exercise. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
For sure. For everybody else, the next and final session is going to be on this main stage. So this broadcast is going to end with if you go run to the bathroom, run there real quick. And then this is actually the perfect segue because we're going to start talking about visualization and manifesting. That is the next step. So don't go too far and we'll be back in 2 minutes. All right. Thank you guys.
Hi, thank you, everyone.